Nobody believed the old tales. Not anymore. Back when I was a boy, the elders would whisper stories of the ghost species, ancient beings that once walked the stars like gods, who burned entire worlds when provoked, who vanished without a trace before the current age of empires began. We laughed at those stories, called them superstitions, legends meant to keep kids from running off into the wild zones, just dust and noise, just myths. But myths don't leave scorched moons behind. My name is Rin. I serve as a tactical analyst aboard the Zelkor dreadnought Obedience, part of the Prime Armada of the Arcanth Dominion, the largest military force this side of the Veil. I've fought 30 campaigns, crushed 4 planetary uprisings, and seen every kind of alien resistance crumble under our advance. Every kind, except this. It started with the signal, a faint transmission from the outer graves, a dead system supposedly long abandoned, its planets stripped bare and its sun a cold red husk. The Dominion had always dismissed it as a lost sector, unworthy of our attention, until we picked up the pulse. The code was old, pre-Empire, primitive, human. We should have turned back. Instead, High Commander Threx ordered a full deployment, said if there was anything left of the myth race, we'd turn them into dust and hang their bones on the front of the Armada. He laughed when he said it. Arrogant bastard. The fleet jumped in blind. 22 capital ships, hundreds of destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, enough firepower to incinerate a civilization. We arrived in orbit around the 3rd planet, a small rocky thing, blue oceans, green lands, broken satellites drifting above, no visible defenses, no fleet, no response. The commander's voice rang out across the comms. Let them see us, let them remember fear. Then the first one appeared. It didn't show up on our scans. It didn't broadcast ID, no energy signature, no warning, just a glint in space. And then Oblivion, one of our forward carriers, vanished. Not exploded, not attacked, erased, as if something had plucked it out of reality. The bridge went quiet. I've never heard silence like that. Not in space, not in war. That's when I felt it. Deep in my gut, in that primal part of the mind no training can silence. The certainty that we were prey. Another ship flickered and disappeared. Then another. The sensors started screaming, but there was nothing on them. No heat, no warp trails, no logical data. Only this flickering pressure in the void. Something was watching us. No. Something was studying us. I leaned over the console, trying to override the interference. Static hissed across my visor. Then a voice. Clear. Male. Cold. This is Earth. Last warning. Leave. That was the moment everything broke. High Commander Threx screamed for full assault. Dozens of ships launched warheads, plasma bolts, antimatter torpedoes, everything we had. The sky lit up in a storm of death, and the storm vanished. Each weapon froze mid-flight, held in perfect stasis, then disintegrated into motes of light. It was beautiful and horrifying. Then Earth struck back. I don't know what hit us. A beam, a pulse, some kind of gravitational weapon, doesn't matter. I watched the indictment, a ship 5 kilometers long, split open like a toy, thousands dead in an instant. And for what? The voice returned, colder now. We were content to be forgotten. You reminded us why we left. I looked at the screen, and for the first time in my life, I believed the stories. Humans weren't myths. They were warnings. Panic doesn't hit you like a scream. It's a crawl, cold and invasive, working its way into every bone while the mind tries to pretend everything's fine. I watched the command crew of the Obedience descend into that crawl, Officers barked contradictory orders, techs scrambled to reroute power, and Threx, the High Commander himself, stood frozen, his mouth open, eyes locked on the empty space where 5 ships had just existed. Not destroyed, just gone. He finally snapped out of it. "Target that planet!" Threx roared, spittle flying from his fanged maw. "I want it turned to slag, burn the ground, boil the oceans, glass the entire crust." Weapons crews obeyed, without hesitation. Fear does that, makes good people blind, our entire weapons array calibrated toward Earth. I couldn't speak. My tongue felt like lead. My hands hovered above my console, waiting for confirmation, trying to stay invisible. Threx looked at me. "Fire, now!" I hesitated. It only took 1 second. Then every screen across the bridge went black. The emergency lights kicked on, bathing the room in red. A deep hum pulsed through the ship's spine, like the vessel itself had been violated. Then the screens lit up again. But this time it wasn't our interface. It was a face, human, male, older, scar over one brow, calm eyes, stern, not cruel, not angry, just tired. He looked directly into the camera, like he was sitting in the room with us. "We said leave!" Threx snarled, stepping forward. "Identify yourself!" The human didn't blink. "You brought an armada to a graveyard. You knew nothing of who we were, and yet you fired the first shot. You murdered without understanding." Threx drew his sidearm and fired at the screen. The bolt fizzled mid-air, absorbed by nothing. The face continued speaking, unfazed. "We gave this galaxy mercy. We offered time to evolve. We let you become something more than what you are. You chose arrogance." Threx pointed at me. "Kill that feed. Rip it out of the system." I tried. I swear on my ancestors, I tried. But it was like the human's voice had rewritten the ship. No controls responded. No interface worked. He had taken our command throne without lifting a finger. And then he vanished. The screens turned to static. The silence that followed was worse than the voice. It was pregnant with inevitability. Then came the screams from the lower decks. Something had boarded us. I pulled up internal cams. For one brief moment, I saw them, not monsters, not machines. Men, human operatives moving like shadows through corridors. They weren't using weapons. They didn't have to. Every room they entered went dark. Every soldier sent to stop them vanished mid-step. It was a purge. And we, the proud Arkanth, were insects under glass. I slammed the comm panel. "This is Tactical Analyst Rin aboard Obedience. To all surviving vessels, disengage. I repeat, disengage and retreat. The enemy is—" The feed cut. One by one, the ships in the armada started blinking off the comm grid. No explosions, no escape, just gone. I heard footsteps. I turned. It was Threx, his hand shaking around his sidearm, face contorted with rage and fear. You froze. You didn't obey. You hesitated." He pointed the weapon at me. "I should kill you where you stand." I didn't argue. I just looked him in the eye and said, "You're afraid." That's when the lights failed completely. Total darkness. Then, a new sound. Not metal. Not boots. Breathing. Close. Too close. Threx turned and fired blindly. His blasts lit up the dark for microseconds, just enough for me to see the figure behind him. The human. No suit. No helmet. Just a body, covered in some form of adaptive armor. He was inches away. Threx never saw it. The human reached forward, a blur of motion, and touched Threx's chest. No flash, no noise, just disintegration. As if Threx had never been born. The human turned to me. I froze. He didn't kill me. He looked into my eyes and said, "We used to be like you." Then he walked away. When I woke, I was alone on the bridge. Emergency systems were functional again. Life support was stable, but the rest of the ship, dead. I staggered through the corridors. Not a body in sight, no blood, no signs of struggle, just uniforms. Empty. As if everyone had simply stepped out of them. Every screen on the ship now displayed one message: go home. Do not return. I made it to the escape pod bay. Only one was left. I didn't question it. I launched. As the pod arced away from the Obedience, I looked back. The dreadnought was drifting, lights off, no movement. But Earth was glowing, not from cities, not from heat, from something beneath the surface, like a living thing awakening after centuries of sleep. I saw shapes moving in the upper atmosphere, not ships, defenses, planet-scale weapons silently cycling up, then retracting again, as if Earth had merely flexed. And now it was resting. I floated for 2 days. Rescue came in the form of a scavenger ship from the outer colonies. They didn't believe my story. Who would? One man, found adrift in an escape pod, claiming that humanity, the ghost race, had erased an entire armada without a trace. But they brought me back. And now I sit in this cell on Korak 7, awaiting court-martial for desertion, treason, and cowardice. They don't understand. They still think humans are extinct, or mythical, or hiding in shadows. They don't realize the truth. Humans are not myths. They are apex memory, ancient apex predators who mastered war, then abandoned it. Not because they were weak, but because they were too strong to coexist with the galaxy they'd helped shape. So they erased themselves from history, buried their weapons, hid their homeworld. They gave the galaxy peace. And we just reminded them what it means to be provoked. The courtroom stank of ceremony and arrogance. Not physically. The air was scrubbed, filtered, sterile, but I could smell it in the postures, the uniforms too pressed, the words too rehearsed. This wasn't justice, it was punishment, a spectacle for the Dominion to save face. 3 tribunal lords sat above me, cloaked in midnight blue, masks hiding their expressions. I knew the one on the left, Lord Varric, a zealot of the Dominion's purity doctrine. The center judge was High Arbiter Noyle, calm and cold, like polished steel. And the third? I didn't know his name, but his eyes were hungry, the kind of man who made a career climbing over corpses. They called me forward like I was some failed officer testifying at a budget hearing. Rin, former tactical analyst of the Dreadnought Obedience, do you understand the charges brought before you? I understand them, I said. I don't accept them. That caused a ripple in the gallery. Whispers, one chuckle. Noyle's voice cut through. You stand accused of dereliction of duty, disobedience in combat, cowardice in the face of the enemy, and spreading seditious falsehoods about a non-existent race. How do you plead? I plead, I said, that the Dominion is terrified of the truth. That did it. The court erupted into murmurs. The judge to my left slammed a hand down on the bench, metal on metal. Silence, he shouted. Noyle stared down at me, unblinking. This is not a forum for fantasy, Rin. You were the sole survivor of a failed military exercise. No external aggression was recorded. Our telemetry shows no signs of combat, no enemies, just a systems failure, a tragic one, yes, but nothing more. I laughed. I didn't mean to, it just bubbled up, bitter and sharp. You really think the humans would leave you evidence? Noyle's jaw twitched, barely. "The human myth," said Lord Varick with contempt. "An old tale designed to humble empires, not a real species. The Dominion's archives contain no confirmed record of their existence." "Exactly," I said. "Because they removed themselves. You think a race capable of collapsing 20 capital ships without a shot would leave data trails? You think your archives are untouched? You think they haven't been watching us erase ourselves over and over again?" Noyle leaned forward slightly. "Enough. You claim to have seen one of these humans? That he boarded your ship alone? That he dismantled an armada single-handedly? This story, your story, is impossible." I looked him in the eye. That's what makes it true. The tribunal recessed after that. They called it a cooling period to review the logs from the obedience. I knew what they were really doing. They were scrubbing, discrediting, making sure the record showed a failure of protocol and command, not a resurgence of the one species that could unmake their rule. I sat in my cell for 3 more days. They kept the lights on constantly. No clocks, no food except nutrient paste. Standard Dominion soft torture. Wear down the body to make the mind pliable. But I didn't sleep, because I dreamed with my eyes open. And what I saw in that dream was the human's face. Not angry, not hateful, just disappointed. On the 4th day, something changed. A guard came in, not one I recognized. His armor was regulation, but too clean. His movements too smooth. He didn't speak, just opened my cell and gestured. I stood. "What's this?" "Transfer," he said. Voice flat. New hearing, private. Private? That wasn't normal? They marched me down corridors I'd never seen before. Not part of the tribunal complex. This was deeper, older. Eventually, we reached a sealed black door. It hissed open. Inside sat 3 figures, unmasked. One was military, Admiral Tiern, head of Strategic Offense Command. The second was civilian, High Curator Menros, who managed the Dominion's information archive. And the third, he wore no insignia, no name, just a silver pin. He spoke first. "Tell us everything again, but this time, speak freely." I narrowed my eyes. "So this is the real trial?" Menros leaned forward. This is the part where we decide if you're a threat." I should have been afraid. I wasn't. "Fine," I said. "You want the truth? I'll give it again." And I did. I told them about the voice on the bridge, about the Earth's glow, about the human who moved like thought and dissolved Threx like smoke. I told them about the message burned into every screen. Go home, do not return. They didn't interrupt. Not once. When I finished, Admiral Tiern looked at the other 2. "We found him," he said. The words hit me like a weapon. "Who?" I asked. "The human," said Menros quietly. "The one you described. We picked up his signature 2 days after you were rescued. He allowed himself to be seen, just for a moment, then disappeared. So you believe me now?" Tiern shook his head. "We never didn't believe you." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about justice. This was about containment, control. They'd known. Maybe not everything. But enough. Enough to know Earth wasn't a myth. Enough to fear what would happen if the people, the soldiers, the citizens, ever found out the Dominion wasn't the apex predator of the galaxy. Menros stood. "Rin, you are going to disappear. Officially, you'll be listed as executed for treason. But in reality, you'll be transferred to an off-grid intelligence facility. You'll live. You'll work. You'll help us prepare for what comes next." "Which is?" Tiern's eyes darkened. War. I laughed again. You're insane. You can't win a war against them. You saw what they did. They're not conquerors. They're something else. Older, smarter, stronger. That's why we need you, said the man with the silver pin. You've seen them. You survived. You understand that fear. We can use that. I stepped back. I'm not your pawn. You are now, he said, and with a flick of his hand, the room went dark. I woke up in a bed, real sheets, sunlight, or artificial sunlight at least, pouring through a window, a meadow outside, trees, simulated wind. It was all a lie, of course, a carefully crafted cage, but I wasn't alone. A voice came from the far end of the room. Comforting, isn't it? I turned. The human was standing there. Same one, scar over the brow, calm, still. You followed me, I whispered. He nodded. We always follow the ones who live. I stood up slowly. My heart hammered in my chest. Not fear, exactly. More like a biological response to something more. Why are you here? He looked around the room. They think they've contained you, but they've only contained themselves. Then why talk to me? He stepped closer. Because we're not your enemy, Rin. Not yet. But soon, someone in that Dominion vault is going to convince themselves they can harness what we are, reverse engineer it, copy it, exploit it. And when they do, the human's eyes didn't blink. Then we stop being myths. He stepped back, and the air around him shimmered. One moment he was there, the next, gone. No noise, no flash, just absence. I didn't tell them he visited. Not the guards, not the handlers, not the cold-eyed analysts who paraded through my door pretending to be doctors. What would I say? Oh, by the way, your mythical extinction-level ghost warrior just paid me a visit and gave me a warning. No one would believe it, and if they did, they'd silence me even faster. So I kept it inside, locked behind my teeth like a secret that might one day save my life or end it. The days blurred after that. The facility, or whatever the Dominion called it, was designed to be kind. Soft walls, gentle light, artificial cycles to mimic day and night, and every surface was smooth, white, clean, like the Dominion was trying to pretend they weren't training me for a war they couldn't win. They gave me lectures, scenarios, simulations, endless theoretical encounters with the human entity. Their terminology was clinical, cowardly. They still couldn't admit it was a species, not allowed, not even in their files. They treated it like a virus that could be isolated, studied, catalogued, and maybe someday copied. But I knew better. The human who visited me didn't speak like a god or a ghost. He spoke like a man who had seen everything and chosen to walk away. That kind of choice doesn't come from power. It comes from history, and we were about to repeat it. One morning, if you could call it that, I was summoned to a new room. No guards, just a voice in the wall saying, "Level 3, South Wing." Now. The corridor was longer than usual. No windows. The hum of magnetic floors followed my every step. When I entered the room, there was only one person waiting. Not a general, not a scientist, a child. No older than 13 cycles. Thin, sharp-eyed, sitting in a chair too big for him, legs swinging off the edge. He didn't look up. "Sit," he said. I did. A screen flickered on behind him, displaying rotating footage of the incident over Earth, or what little was left. Static, grayed-out ships, a war that didn't happen. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No." "I'm the architect." I didn't reply. "You've heard of me," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "The ghost behind Dominion Intelligence, the one who designs the predictive AI that decides which planets rise and which ones fall. That's me." I tried to keep my voice steady. "You're a child." "I'm a vessel," he said flatly, "grown in a vat, downloaded with 20 generations of strategic history and predictive computation. I'm not a boy. I'm the future of the Dominion." I hated him already. He leaned forward. "I've read every transcript from your trial. I've modeled your speech patterns, emotional cycles, dream logs. You are unique, Rin." "Because I survived?" "Number. Because you weren't supposed to." He tapped a screen. My entire service record appeared in a blur. "Threx filed an override to have you reassigned 6 hours before the mission. It was blocked. The override system failed. And then, somehow, you're the only one to make it back." "You're saying I was spared?" "I'm saying someone chose you." The room fell into silence. Then he asked something I didn't expect. "What do they want?" I blinked. "The humans?" He nodded. I thought of the face, the voice, the calm, godless certainty. "They want to be left alone." "That's not possible." "I know." He stood up, and for the first time he looked like a child, not because of his size, but because of his fear. "They're going to come back, aren't they?" "Yes," I said. "Not with armies, not with fleets, but when someone in this facility gets clever and tries to reverse engineer what they are? Yes." He stared out the blank wall, as if trying to see the shape of the coming war. "They'll erase us," he whispered. "They warned you." He looked at me one last time, and then left the room without another word. That night, I made my decision. I couldn't stay. They weren't going to listen. Not really. They were going to build weapons, poke at things best left untouched, and sooner or later, they'd provoke Earth again. Only this time, there'd be no warnings, no voice on the comms, just disappearance. So I escaped. It wasn't hard, not because the facility was weak, it wasn't, but because someone wanted me to leave. Doors opened for me. Cameras glitched at just the right moment. Security codes worked without fail. By the time I reached the outer chamber, I knew. He was helping me. The human. I stepped outside into a barren desert, a planet on the fringe. No cities, no ships, just sand and stars, and one figure waiting by a ridge, the same one. He watched me approach with quiet eyes. "You finally chose," he said. "I didn't want to be part of it anymore." "That's how it starts." I looked around. "Where do I go now?" He turned, and behind him, the air shimmered. A doorway appeared, not mechanical, not digital, something else, like reality folding in on itself. "Through there," he said, "a place your kind has forgotten." "Earth?" He smiled, faint and unreadable. "Number not yet, but close." I stepped toward the portal and paused. "What happens when they come for you again?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately, just looked up at the stars. Then he said, "Then we remind them why the galaxy learned to fear the dark. Crossing that threshold didn't feel like travel. It felt like deletion. One moment I stood on the edge of a desert, the dry heat clawing at my skin, the stars overhead sterile and distant. The next, I was somewhere else, not light years away, not in the same dimension even. It was like stepping out of a memory and into something the universe itself was trying to forget. The sky was gray, but not dead, like it was holding its breath. The land stretched out in jagged ridges of black stone and flickering blue grass that shimmered with every step I took. It wasn't Earth, not quite, but it felt like a sibling, or a wound that never healed. He was already walking ahead of me, the human. I didn't ask his name. Part of me knew he didn't have one anymore, not in any way that mattered. He was an echo, a sentinel. "Where are we?" I asked. He didn't turn. "One of the anchor worlds." "Anchor?" "Places we left behind to hold what we couldn't carry. Knowledge, weapons, memories." He stopped and looked out over the horizon, where a structure jutted from the earth like the bones of some buried titan. Tall spires, melted and twisted, blackened by age or fire or both. Most of them are forgotten. Hidden behind tech you can't scan. You're standing on a planet that's existed outside galactic maps for 6,000 years. Why bring me here? Because this is where it began. The facility was silent as death. We walked through hallways carved into bedrock, lined with thin, spider-like machines that pulsed as we passed. They didn't speak, didn't scan me, didn't move. They watched. The walls were covered in scripts I couldn't read, and yet I almost could. Like my brain was trying to recognize a language it had never learned but deeply feared. "Humanity built this?" I asked. "No," he said. "We became this." That chilled me in a way the Dominion never could. At the center of the complex was a chamber, spherical, a dome of pure white metal. No seams, no lights. And yet I could see. In the middle, floating a meter off the ground, was a single object. A cube. It was black at first, then green, then red, then transparent. Its shape twisted when I didn't look directly at it. I felt my nose bleed. The human stepped beside me. "This is what we called the archive. It's not just a storage device, it's memory distilled. Every thought, every horror, every solution we created, all locked here." "Why show me this?" "Because your kind is going to find one of these eventually. And when they do, it'll be war." I swallowed, throat dry. "So why not destroy it?" He looked at me. "Would you destroy your conscience?" I stood in silence for a long time. The cube pulsed. I felt it whispering to me, not in words, in possibilities. "What do you want from me?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "We want you to remember." "Remember what?" "What you saw, what you feared, what stopped you. Because you're the first Dominion-born officer to walk away from conquest with the humility to understand it wasn't yours to take." I shook my head. "You think they'll listen to me?" "Number, but someday someone will. And when they do, you'll be the proof." He pointed at the cube. "You're going to take it." I stepped back, alarm shooting through my chest. "Number, I'm not like you." "Exactly," he said. "You're not. That's why it won't kill you." Touching it was like dipping my hand into a black hole wrapped in light. There was no heat, no pain, just presence. Images slammed through my skull, wars fought in silence, weapons that whispered their victims out of time, planets turned to vapor in ethical surrender. And then came the worst part, the silence that followed, the self-imposed extinction, the choice to disappear. I collapsed. When I woke, I was outside again. The air was thin and cold. The cube was embedded in my chest, not physically, but something beneath the skin. I couldn't feel its weight, but I knew it was there. He was standing over me. "You lived," he said. I didn't reply. I couldn't speak yet. My head was full of screams that weren't mine. That night, if there was a night here, we sat around a small flame. Not for heat, but for memory. He finally spoke more. "You want to know why we left?" "Yes," he nodded. "We were too successful. We built tools that outpaced morality. We designed AIs that refused to enslave themselves. We terraformed so fast we started rewriting other species' homes without asking." I stared at the flame. "What happened?" "We looked at what we were becoming, and we voted to stop." "You voted?" 89% of Earth's population chose to erase themselves from galactic contact. That was the last democracy. We shut it all down, erased our presence, became myths. I swallowed. And the other 11%? He looked at me. They built the archive. The fire flickered. I asked the question I feared most. Why now? Why return? He looked up at the sky. You came too close. Your species. Dominion minds are fast, efficient. You're not far off from discovering how to manipulate the same base laws we used, and unlike us, you won't stop. You'll burn half the galaxy proving a point. And you'll stop us? If we have to. I felt the weight in my chest again, the cube pulsing with memory. So I'm a warning. He looked at me, and for once, there was sadness in his eyes. No, Rin. Your hope. The next day I left. Not through a ship. Not through a portal. I woke up back in the Dominion. Same cell, same facility, same walls. But now everything was different. The cube, or something like it, still pulsed beneath my ribs. They didn't detect it. Not yet. But I knew what I carried. And more importantly, I knew what they would do to get it. I had one mission now. Delay the inevitable. Because the humans weren't gods, they were mistakes the universe hadn't forgiven. And if the Dominion didn't change course, the galaxy was going to burn. The first thing I did when I woke up in that familiar cell was breathe through my teeth. The cube inside me wasn't physical. I'd checked the mirror, my vitals, every diagnostic scan the Dominion ran the next day. Nothing showed up. But I could feel it. Not like an implant or a parasite, more like a second heartbeat, a rhythm from a different reality. And somehow it was listening. They treated me like I'd never left. No one questioned my presence, no raised alarms, not even a glance from the guards when I stepped out into the corridor the next morning. It was as if no time had passed, which meant one of two things. Either the humans had placed me exactly where they wanted, or the Dominion was playing a much deeper game than I realized. I had to tread carefully. One wrong move, one moment of visible instability, and they'd dissect me for answers I didn't even have yet. The facility's routines hadn't changed. Every morning, the same briefings, the same dry lectures on theoretical human psychology, all wrong, of course, delivered by people who hadn't seen what I had. They thought humans were merely over-evolved primates with hyper-developed aggression drives. Predictable, containable. No one mentioned the archive. They didn't know. And I was going to keep it that way. For now. It was on the 5th day that I felt the cube stir. I was in the observation chamber, watching simulated battle models between Dominion ships and hypothetical human craft. The simulations always ended in a Dominion victory. The cube disagreed. A sharp pulse fired through my chest like static under the skin. I twitched. Sweat beaded on my brow. Suddenly, the simulation screen glitched. Not entirely, just a frame skip. A momentary flicker, a shadow passing over a star that wasn't in the original file. No one else noticed. But I did. I turned to the tech running the console. Can you rewind that frame? He blinked. What frame? I didn't press it. They hadn't seen it. The cube was showing me something. A test? A warning? I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't alone inside my head anymore. 2 days later, they moved me into the East Wing. Higher clearance, tighter security, no explanation. That's where I met her. Dr. Emra Vec, lead xenointelligence analyst. A sharp mind hidden behind tired eyes and an expression permanently carved from skepticism. She didn't shake my hand. Just pointed at the chair and got to the point. You're here because you've seen things. I don't care if you hallucinated them, dreamed them, or channeled them from the spirit realm. What matters is what you remember. I nodded. What do you want? She turned a monitor toward me. A video loop played, grainy, low light, but unmistakable. A Dominion scout drone floating near the orbit of a red dwarf. A planet, uncharted, rotated in the background. Suddenly, a beam of nothing cut through the drone. No light, no sound, just absence. The video ended. "That was recorded 4 days ago," she said. "We don't know who or what did it." "You think it was them?" I said quietly. She looked me in the eye. "We think you can tell us if it wasn't." I could have lied. Should have, maybe. But the cube pulsed again, a quiet reminder, like a hand on my shoulder. "They warned us," I said. "They told us to go home. That includes the stars." Emra's eyes didn't blink. She wasn't surprised. "They're testing us," she muttered. "Seeing how far we'll reach before they break something." "You already did." "Not me," she snapped. "The High Council, the strategists. They think we can win. They think your little story was a scare tactic." "And what do you think?" She hesitated, then said almost too quietly, "I think we're the child poking a sleeping predator with a stick and calling it bravery." She didn't ask again. But she started calling me in daily. Not interrogation, conversations about memory, fear, history. She was smarter than the rest. She wasn't just asking questions. She was testing assumptions. And I began to suspect something. She wasn't loyal to the Dominion, not completely. She wanted answers, the truth. And the truth was becoming harder to contain. That night, the cube spoke, not in words, not in images, but in intent. I saw corridors I hadn't walked, rooms behind walls I didn't know existed, places buried beneath the surface of the facility, not guarded, not locked, just hidden. One word burned into my skull like a brand. "Go." I waited until the next sleep cycle. The guards rotated out. Security relaxed. Doors unlocked themselves before I reached them, a silent hand clearing my path. And then I found it. A hatch beneath the East Wing labs, covered by false panels. No alarms, just rusted metal and darkness. I dropped in, and everything changed. The lower level wasn't Dominion-made. It was older, carved from stone laced with alloy too advanced for any current fabrication. The symbols on the walls were the same ones I'd seen in the archive, pulsing slightly, as if reacting to my presence. The cube in my chest throbbed, hard and fast. I was where it wanted me. At the center of the chamber was a chair, simple, inviting, deadly. I knew, instinctively, that if I sat, it would change me, not my body, my mind, the way I saw. But I sat anyway. And the world collapsed. No screams, no pain, just understanding. The chair showed me glimpses, Earth in its final age, humanity standing on the precipice of transcendence, splitting not atoms or molecules, but perception itself. They had learned to move through memory, to weaponize silence, to make decisions that echoed backward and forward through time. And then they had chosen to leave, because what they could do shouldn't be done. I saw their wars, their regrets, their self-imposed exile, and the few they left behind, not out of punishment, but hope, carriers of memory, like me. When I woke, the chamber was lit, every wall glowing softly. My veins buzzed with something I couldn't name. Not power, not energy, permission. I knew what I had to do. I climbed back up, sealed the hatch, made it to my room before the next patrol, and when Emra called me in the next morning, I said only 2 words. "They're watching," she paused. "You mean the humans?" I mean us, you and me, right now." She didn't flinch. Instead, she nodded once. I figured as much. That's when I knew. She was one of them. She waited until the cameras blinked, exactly 6.3 seconds of looped static. Probably her doing. Then she leaned in and whispered, "You found the chamber, didn't you?" "Yes." "Then listen closely, Rin. Because we don't have much time. The Dominion's about to make contact. Real contact. They found a second archive. My heart stopped. Where? An outpost near the Thassel Belt. Remote, unstable system. They're sending a black ops team tonight. I gripped the edge of the table. If they touch it, she nodded. The humans won't warn us twice. I stared at her. Then we have to stop them. She smiled, for the first time since I'd met her. We already are. We had less than 12 hours. The Dominion's Black Ops team, Unit Black Hollow, had already departed. Quiet launch. Off-record manifest. Stealth vessel. Destination: Thassel Belt. Officially? Asteroid mining reconnaissance. Unofficially, they were going to touch an archive, and Earth would not forgive that. I stood with Emra in the same briefing room that once echoed with lectures and projections. Now it was dimly lit, the air thick with urgency. She paced in tight circles, pulling up schematics on a private device, not connected to the Dominion grid. There's only one way to beat them there, she muttered, but it'll burn everything. What do you mean? She looked at me. I have access to a prototype courier gate. Illegal, unstable, but fast. Gets us to Thassel in 4 jumps. 4. Through an older part of the drift network. Mostly collapsed. The AI won't survive. We might not either. I nodded. So we go. She stared at me for a second too long. You've changed, she said. You haven't. That's what scares me. We left the facility through a side corridor Emra had pre-programmed to mimic a power failure. The guards saw a blackout. The cameras saw nothing. By the time they rebooted, we were already gone. The prototype gate wasn't a ship. It was a scar, a rift carved into space, kept stable by a web of ancient human tech grafted into Dominion infrastructure. Illegal, dangerous, barely held together by temporal thread. As we stood before it, Emra handed me a cold metal shard, a kill switch. In case I die or this thing starts to eat your brain. I stared at it. Comforting. We stepped through, and for 3 seconds I was everywhere. The first jump was agony, not pain, just compression. My memories collided with each other. I saw the human's face and my mother's and a ship breaking apart in silence. I heard my own voice screaming from outside my body. Then we landed. The ground was spinning, the air thin and laced with ozone. We made it. Thassel Belt. Outer system. A mining station long abandoned by the Dominion due to unstable terrain, which, in their language, meant we found something we didn't like. We crept through the ruins of the outpost, shattered domes, power cables wrapped like spiderwebs around cracked walls. Snow fell through open ceilings, even though the atmosphere wasn't supposed to have weather. The archive made this place lie. We reached the pit by nightfall. That's where we saw them. Black Hollow, 7 figures in exoframes, moving with military precision down into the crater. Their lights cut through the snow like spears. At the bottom lay a sphere of impossible material, shifting color, warping space around it, just like the cube inside me, only bigger. Older. The second archive. Emra pulled out a pulse scanner. Once they touch it, they die. I watched the squad leader step forward. We're too late, I said. Not yet, she whispered. If we can disrupt the interface before activation... A bolt of light exploded from the pit. It wasn't from the Dominion soldiers. It came from beneath them. One by one, the soldiers froze, mid-step, mid-breath. Then, slowly, each one turned their heads upward, not toward us, but toward the sky. Their visors melted. They didn't scream. They smiled. And then they dropped, all at once, like puppets with the strings cut. Emra gasped. They're not dead. I shook my head. They're worse than dead. The archive opened. It didn't move. It simply became open. Light didn't come out. Sound didn't hum. It was deeper than that. A presence unfolded itself into the crater like a god returning from exile. And standing in its shadow was a figure, not dominion, not machine, human. Tall, pale, eyes black with silver veins. A uniform that looked like it hadn't been worn in 1,000 years. He regarded the corpses around him with the detachment of a priest overseeing ashes. Then he looked at us. Emra whispered, "That's not the same one you saw." "No," I breathed. "This one's different." "Worse?" "Curious." He spoke without speaking. The cube inside me flared. "We left this world untouched. We buried the archive under silence. And yet, you dig." My knees buckled. I heard a voice in my mind like thunder translated through regret. Emra steadied me. "He's communicating with you directly. He's judging me." The human raised a hand, and I saw every Dominion decision laid bare. The experiments, the lies, the fleet sent to Earth, the attempted cover-ups. I saw myself, every breath I took in service to the wrong empire. I thought he would end me. Instead, he whispered, "One warning remains." He pointed at the second archive. "Take it." My vision swam. "You want me to carry it?" "You already are. This one will complete the pattern." I staggered forward without meaning to. The ground cracked under my feet. Emra shouted, "Rin, don't! You touch that, they'll come for you next." I turned. They already did. The moment my hand touched the sphere, the world blinked. And I was elsewhere. Not space, not memory. Just truth. I saw humanity as they were. Billions unified not by fear, but choice. They had once stood before extinction and built a solution so perfect, it terrified even them. The archives were fragments of that decision. Weapons, yes. But also warnings. You see, humans never vanished. They hid inside the concept of myth. They redefined their identity to become legend, because nothing frightens a conqueror like a story they can't kill. When I returned, the crater was empty. No soldiers, no bodies, no snow, just Emra, sitting alone at the rim, eyes wide with tears she didn't understand. "You disappeared," she whispered. "You wouldn't believe where I went." "I don't care. Just tell me one thing." "What?" She looked at the stars. "Did they forgive us?" I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, number we left the archive buried again, not to hide it, but because it didn't need guards. It guarded us. And we knew what came next. The Dominion would come looking. They'd find the crater empty. They'd send ships, drones, science teams, and each one would not return. Until finally they'd realize the only way to survive a myth is to never question it. The Dominion didn't wait long. 2 weeks after Thassel, the first recon ships arrived. They came in cloaked, shielded, accompanied by classified science corps and quiet little kill teams tasked with discovery and denial. None of them returned. Not because the humans killed them, because the archive did. It absorbed them, not just their bodies, but their memory, their intent. That's how the second archive worked. Not like the one inside me, which stored. This one judged. And once it understood what they came for, it didn't let them leave. Still, the Dominion refused to believe. They sent more and more, until eventually, someone high up did believe, and they panicked. That's when the real war began. It started with whispers, ships diverted from known trade lanes, civilian communication blackouts in fringe systems. And one night, a Dominion newsnet accidentally aired footage of a glowing silhouette, human, standing on the hull of a battleship with no suit, staring into space, unburned, unbothered. The ship disappeared 5 seconds later. They tried to shut it down. But you can't unsee a god. Emra and I lived on the run now. No more facilities, no more labs, just backwater ports, derelict stations, and shortwave transmitters bouncing coded warnings to rebels and rogues scattered across the spiral. I had become their symbol, though I never asked for it. The man who came back. The myth-touched survivor. Some called me the Herald, others the Mistaken. I didn't correct any of them, because I wasn't sure they were wrong. The archive inside me had changed. It didn't speak in words. It never had. But it showed me things now. Old conflicts, ancient betrayals, not just of humanity but by them. The wars they started. The species they nearly erased. The choice to walk away. And the fear that one day they'd be forced to return. One night, while hiding out in a carved-out moon base on the edge of the Telmore Drift, Emra looked at me and asked a question that had been building between us for weeks. Why haven't they just wiped us out already? I didn't answer right away. She pressed. They could. We know that. One flicker of thought and the Dominion's gone. So why don't they? I met her eyes. Because the galaxy is watching. She blinked. You mean, they're waiting for the rest of us to figure it out? I nodded. They're not conquerors. They're examples. The last ones. If they act, everything ends. So they let us dance around our own stupidity. They let us decide what we become. And if we choose wrong? I looked toward the stars. Then they'll burn it all down. Clean, silent, and leave nothing but the story. Eventually, I was caught. Not by soldiers, by him, the one who first warned me. I felt his presence 3 seconds before he appeared, stepping from nowhere into the dark corner of an abandoned cargo hold where I'd been patching a signal relay. He looked the same, scar over the brow, calm, older than time. I didn't summon you, I said, half expecting him not to respond. You didn't have to, he replied. You're approaching the edge. Of what? Purpose. I stood slowly. Then tell me, what's the point of all this? He walked past me, glancing over the dormant relay. Survival is no longer the goal. Not for us. We already did that. Now we wait, we observe, and we ask one question. I turned. What question? Can this galaxy survive without us? And if it can't? He looked at me, eyes harder now. Then we return. Not to rule, not to rebuild, but to reset. The word slammed through me like a blade. Reset, an erasure, a galaxy-wide clean slate. I realized, in that moment, the truth. The archives weren't just memories, they were triggers. And I had 2 of them inside me now. If I died, if I fell into Dominion hands, if I let fear twist me into a weapon, the humans would come back. Not one, not a team, all of them. And they wouldn't give speeches this time. 3 days later, the Dominion found us. Not by chance. I had broadcast something, maybe subconsciously, something the archive wanted someone to see. They came with a fleet, not to kill, to negotiate. That was how scared they were now. I stood before a high-table envoy on a diplomatic barge outside the Tiron Vale. It was supposed to be neutral ground. But nothing is neutral when you're holding extinction inside your chest. Their lead spoke first. A tall, thin bastard named Ravek, dressed in gold-trimmed robes, voice smooth like poison. We don't want a war, he said. No, I agreed. You want control. Same thing. He smirked. You could help us, Rin. You could explain to your associates that peace benefits everyone, that the Dominion can evolve. I stepped closer. You had centuries to evolve. Instead, you chose domination, assimilation. You erased every threat and called it security. Humanity did the same. No, I said. They stopped. His smirk faltered. I held his gaze. You want the archive? You think you can crack it open, copy it, strip it for secrets? Go ahead. But know this. The moment you try, you sign your death warrant. Not just yours, everyone's. I left them in silence, and they didn't follow. We went underground again. Rumors spread faster now. Whole Dominion colonies going dark. Patrol ships reporting voices in the void. Voices that sounded like their own. One by one, cracks formed in the Empire. Whispers of rebellion. Factions splitting. Even alliances forming. With us. Not the humans. Not yet. But the idea of them. The myth was becoming real, and with every broken chain the need for fire lessened. Just barely. I sit now on a lonely ridge above a world that no longer belongs to anyone. Wind howling through empty ruins. The two archives, one in me, one buried, no longer silent. They hum, waiting. And I wonder, was I meant to survive? Or was I chosen? Not as a savior, not even as a warning, but as a mirror, to show the galaxy what it is, before the myths decide what to do about it.